I let this Deshojo maple grow too fast, and as a result there's now never going to be any branches here on this section. This is really bare, and I want a branch here and I want a branch there. And that is why this year I let these two branches grow very long. I'm not going to prune them off. I'm not going to wire them to make a fake branch. No, I'm going to graft them in. There is a line where there was a bud and a node here, and there's a line here where there was a node. So the little line here and here, those are buds. Anything between here and here is just scars. There's nothing here that indicates that there used to be a bud. This section is one internode, and there will never ever be any buds growing. I'm going to graft this in there, and I'm going to graft this in there. They have to come in from the back, going to the front, here and here, because there's a nice back branch here and here. Let's get going. Now, grafting a Japanese maple is very easy in winter. All you need is long branches, a drill. Where is my drill? Let me get a drill. And then you need to create a few holes. Now, key to drilling a proper hole is to start from the place where you want the branch to appear. That way you always have exactly the point where you want the branch to be at, and you drill through, and then later on you take your long whip and you push it through the hole, and it comes out on the other side exactly where you want it. Then you need to secure it in place, making sure that there's buds right at the opening. That will aid later on if you want to prune short and redevelop. Make sure that the hole is not too big. The buds should just fit through. And that's also why early winter is a really nice time to do this, because the buds are very, very small. I've just manually removed all the leaves. You can see here, the upper branches still have some leaves. But before I start drilling the holes, let me wire out these branches so it is less awkward to work with. In spring I'm going to air layer this. I'm going to take this whole top off. This then becomes the new leader of the tree. Hopefully that will also push the roots to really grow these lower branches, aiding in connecting tissue to form between the wound that I make in the trunk and the young whip that I push through. Now, you can damage the bark on the whip, but you don't really have to. As it pushes on, it will fuse automatically. Now I'm adding quite thick wire to the branch that I'm going to graft to aid in positioning it well. In the end, this is all going to be cut off, so if the bark gets damaged, that's not really a big problem. But thicker wire is just a nice support. Don't go too far, because you want to still have place for the branch to go through the hole. Wiring in early winter, or in fact very late fall, it is November now, is a lot easier than doing this in early spring, as the branches are still quite pliable. There's still a lot of liquid in there. Also, over winter, the branches now get to set a little bit. I only wire the main branches at this point in time. I assume that most of these side branches will eventually be cut off anyway. I have 3 drills here, and by the looks of it, my smallest drill will do if I just push the last 2 buds out. I need one bigger if I also want to get these out. I want to get as small a hole as possible, so this one should work quite well. Let's check the other branch. Maybe that needs a little bit bigger. That also seems big enough for this branch. Good. 2 small holes, please. And I want a hole here on the outward curve, and I want a hole here on the outward curve. There's one going to go from the left and one going to go from the right. Just like that. I may notice that the light is slightly different, and that is because I don't have an extension cord and only one socket in neighborhood. So this one is going to be the first branch, and key is to take the angle at which you want to enter or depart and take it exactly at the point where the branch should connect, so that's here a little bit to the front, and then to go very slowly because you don't want to burn the wound. That's one. And the other the same way. Here on the outside, roughly there, I would say. And now really it is just a matter of moving these branches in place so that I can weave the end through the little hole. And ideally with as little pressure as possible on the hole. So I'm just bending now the branch so it gets into the neighborhood, and then see whether I can squeeze it through here. Very gently. It should come out on the other side now. Can't see, but it's not long enough. So this is always something that is a little bit fidgety, because you have to be gentle, you don't want to damage the bud. Oh, it is out already. Good. There we go. And on the other side the same thing. Doing this, of course, while the camera is running is a bit of a tricky thing. Now you may find that the part where the drill exited the trunk has a few fibers, and you can just open it up a little bit before you enter the whip in there. And I actually like to also remove the bark around the edge a little bit. This way you have a nice open access wound for the whip, which now can be moved into place, going through the canopy, reaching the hole, and then just gently move it, gently slide it in and through. And now we have these two whips in place, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of cut paste and I put it on the back side of this wound, the liquid cut paste, to act as a sort of a glue, and then I'll add a little bit of cut paste around the wound as well to aid in protection. I don't want the cut paste to interfere with the healing over, so I'm just going to gently glue it against the trunk. I'm not aiming at closing the hole on this side. This is really just to protect it from water, from fungal infections, from little critters, just like that. It's not touching the edge of the wound on this side. On the other side, however, here I actually do want the wound to heal. So this is where I'm adding a little bit of the liquid cut paste that will also glue the thing in place, hopefully. Now there's no real aftercare required here. This just goes back into the garden. Of course you have to be very careful that you don't pull on these loops. So that's going to be the trick for the rest of winter, to not have those pulled out. And in springtime, just let the tree grow. Let it grow strong, especially these little whips there. And then we'll see again in summer how it has recovered. Hopefully by the end of summer I can just cut these off and have new branches in place. Early spring, good news. Both of these grafts are alive. However, if I look at them, this one here has grown nice extensions, right? But have a look here on the other side. It is a little bit difficult to see because there's so much growth here. There's only one little red dot at the end. However, the donor branch has created lots of side branches. So I'm going to see whether I can trigger the terminal bud by just removing this extension growth on the donor side of this branch. And I have to be very careful. I don't want to clip the donor branch itself, of course. So from this angle you can clearly see this is actually a branch from the donor side. And if I remove that, you can see the little red bud here at the end, which is alive, but it's not extending yet. Also this here, I'm going to remove this leaf pair so it gets as much light as possible. This one here, of course, is extending nicely already, and I don't need to do all that much. Let's remove this as well. And remove that as well. There we go. And now this needs to get as much light as possible. So let me thin this a little bit, stop this from growing too much. And really aid in this growth. Early summer, and what we see is that this tree is doing really well. I've put one and another, I think you can't see it, 2 air layers here in this tree. It is starting to pop buds here all along the trunk, which is a really good sign. That means that here the disconnect has been made fully. It is not bridging, instead it is probably rooting. The grafts that I have in place is not so great, and I'll get you in closer because this one is not growing at all. This one has extended quite nicely, and I think that this will grow quite well. We are about to get the second push for the season, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to thin out the foliage. I'm going to remove half of the leaves here at the bottom, except for this grafted, but more importantly, This little grafted branch here, this is not going to push. It has died off. I'm going to remove it and I'm going to see whether I can push a new young whip through and get that one to root. So quite clearly, right? This here has all died off. And I need to be very careful because there's lots and lots of grafted branches going through. But this I can now take off. And here at the base, well actually, you see here at the base there's callousing happening. Might actually still have a living bud there. Let me take a closer look. I think indeed that the base here is still alive. So I'm going to leave this in place. Now this is exposed to light. And I'm going to continue with what I said I was going to do. I'm going to extensively defoliate all these branches. Just a quick peek in how big this tree actually is. Look at all this foliage mass up here. That doesn't really help, of course, with the grafts down there, but it does help with the air layering. It is going to go down all the way to here, but I've only done the two here. This is for later layering right there. And this, of course, this masses of foliage up there that is using water and resources, but not producing it for the roots. That is causing the lower branches and the lower trunks to really slow down. So it is a delicate balance, and I should actually have not done this at the same time. And this, I mean the grafting and the air layering. It is a lot of effort for the tree to do. And everything's cleaned up, thinned out. This is ready to go back into the garden and just allow it to grow for the rest of the season. And this is of course now going to get lots and lots of extra sunlight in the hope that that starts to push, because the base is still red and I know there was a little bud just at the attachment. And otherwise I'm just going to have to cut it off and push a new one through later in this year. This one I'm not touching right now. It is doing quite well. I hope for another push, and then by the end of the year I can probably separate it from the donor. Middle of summer, and what you can see now that this branch has extended nicely, but it is still thinner or as thick as the side that is entering, so the donor side. That means that this has not completely taken yet. This one, or even though there was a little red bud, hasn't taken at all. It has just died off. Instead, on the donor side there's new sprouts. However, as mentioned in the beginning, here is a little line, so there is potential. So there is potential for natural budding, and meanwhile I have received some branches here. So I'm not too concerned about this one. This I'm just going to leave on. It has stopped growing for the year, I think. Maybe it will grow a little bit more. I can peel away the cut paste here. So you see now that the wound has completely sealed around the little exiting branch right there. That's a really good sign. That means that the connection is being made, but it just needs a little bit more time. It's the middle of August, and now it is very clear that the exit side is a lot thicker than the entrance side. That is the sign to look for that this graft has taken. Now that it is pushing here as well, it is nice and healthy. I'm going to slowly separate this from the mother plant. Now when I say slowly, I of course don't mean I'm going to very slowly cut through it. No, I'm going to wean it off. So I'm first going to remove a little bit of the bark on the donor side and a little bit of the wood. So I'm just gently scraping off part of this branch. This will mean that there is less water and less nutrients exchanged over this connection, strengthening the connection on the other side. I do this now, and in a couple of weeks I can cut it off completely if this doesn't start to build now. And of course it is very clear, this little branch here, this has died, so this graft has failed. And I'm just going to remove the branch on the other side. Now there is a little bit of activity here, but I don't think this is living connected to the main branch. No. We're headed into September, and when you look at that, this growth is pushing. Look at how fat that has gotten in comparison to the entrance side. Now I'm going to girdle this section completely, and I think in 2-3 weeks I'm just going to cut it off. This now has fused completely, but still, let's just give the tree some time to get used to this not being here anymore. All done. The air layer. In 2 weeks time I'll have this on the table again. By that time for sure there should be roots, and then it might have cooled down a little bit, be a little bit more humid. You can tell it is not optimal weather for my maples at the moment, and this sits in full sun, so it's suffering a little bit. I'll look at the air layer later. Alright, 2nd week of September, and now it is really obvious. This is growing really strongly, and this is really thin. Look at the difference in size between the entrance and the exit. And to me that means no more drama. Done. Also, I can now remove this side, everything that has been twisted and looped around. Oh yeah, I connected it somewhere. Anyway, this is one thread graft established. Now I can remove also everything here on the entrance side, but I'm going to leave that in place a little while longer. I'm going to allow the tree to take over the care. This I expect fully to continue expanding and just in fall do the same thing as the rest of the tree. I'll clean this up and then we don't have to talk about it anymore. As I am finishing up work on this tree, how about we take a look at the air layer too. Oh, that looks promising. Look at that, that's nice. That's chock-a-block full of roots. Nice. Right, let's separate this and pot it up individually. Interestingly, it has not rooted here at the place where I wanted roots, but it has just rooted for this one. So one thing I could do, and I think I might, I just separate here and make this a separate plant and then have this as another layer and check why this is not rooted. And I think this I'm now just going to treat as a massive cutting. There are some root tips emerging in the bark here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut it off. I'm going to remove all the leaves here from the top so it doesn't lose all that much water. And then I'll just plant it up and hope that it continues on rooting. Now of course all there is left to do, clean up this cut. As it is the end of season, I might not go all that close to the new leader, but some of this can go because all this deadwood is just an infection, potential infection, right? So I'm just nibbling this away until I get close to where I want it to be, and then in spring I might make the cut nice and clean. Right, I can now of course wait until spring and show you what it looks like, how this wound has healed. But maybe I'll do that in another video. I'll make a very quick short video. For now I think this has served as a really nice example on how to thread graft, how to reduce your tree to get to a much more compact tree. I am filling this hole in the canopy. This I can of course next year wire into position. I'm not sure whether I need that graft that didn't take. I think the tree is filling up by itself quite naturally. Now this top, over winter I might pull up a little bit over, just like this. And then pretty much this tree is ready to start looking at the full final composition, more refinement, smaller leaves, tighter canopy. But yeah, this of course still needs to heal. But that's no problem, because that now also needs to heal. The eventual tree might be about this tall. Once all these wounds have healed, then I'm happy. The bari is also coming along quite well. Yeah, pretty pleased. This was Jelle, grafting Deshojo Japanese maple. I hope this explained it to you. And good luck. Try it yourself. See you next time. This was Jelle, growing bonsai.